Welcome, everybody, to DAT Poker Podcast, episode 137, January 29th, 2023. I'm your host, Dave Schwartz, alongside the best producer in the business. I don't care what the awards nominations say. It's Roscoe P. Coltrane. Roscoe.
Well, you have one way of describing it. I have another.
Good to see. Terrence Chan, how are you, T?
I'm great. I'm happy to have the proper producer back, so I don't have to panic about this, even if you've got this weird fisheye lens going. I don't know what's that. What's the deal with that? We're just trying to get more of your face in the shot. What's happening, Ross? I don't know.
It's the angle. And Daniel Negreanu in Las Vegas. Daniel, how are you?
I'm doing good. Just started a diet 3 days ago. We'll be dieting till the World Series of Poker so that I can get fat again.
Yo-yo.
Good old yo-yo diet.
Yes, I love it. It's fun for me.
This part's
what's going on? Sorry, you in the gym? You in the gym working out?
I started eating better again and getting back in the gym. It's been a bit, we had the mold issue and just was kind of sloppy through the holidays, but I'm not traveling. I missed out on this whole big grand world tour of all these high roller events, Vietnam, Paris, and Bahamas, and all over the place. I'm staying home. I'm going to play the Poker Go events. We got the mixed game series coming up February 4th to 11th. That'll be a lot of fun. The PLO series, then the US Poker Open. So when I'm home, it's a lot easier, as everyone, I can imagine, like when you're trying to cook yourself and all those things, it's easier to get back in shape.
We just got through some Poker Go events, and you finished third at one of the events and passed 50 million in lifetime earnings. I noticed that you're in third place. And I was wondering, how important this, obviously, these are skewed. I think Justin is 8 or 9 million ahead of you because, all the Triton events and the different stuff that, you got to travel around the world for, big buy-ins that you maybe don't get in as much as they do. Is that all-time money list thing important to you at all?
I mean, it was at a time, obviously, honestly, I've been playing 30 years. Most of my career, I was number one. Right before buy-ins started to happen, where you regularly see like 100K, $1 million buy-ins. Like if you excluded, for example, all the 25K and above or whatever, I'm comfortably ahead, I would say, in that. But yeah, it's just a question of inflation, right? So as buy-ins get bigger, it becomes more of a recency thing. You look at guys like TJ Kluche and Miami John Cernudo, like they had great tournament resumes, but they did it at a time when they were just smaller buy-ins, right? Carlos Mortenson's another one who would be, near the tops in terms of ROI of any player. And that's impressive. But the list itself, I think it's just fun for like media types to talk about. But in terms of like assigning any meaning to it, it's really silly, right? I think we can all agree it means absolutely nothing in terms of anything. It's just like a cool thing to note, like, ooh, this person's cashed for the most. Cool. What does it mean past that? Does it mean anything? No.
I bet Hendon Mob would know, because they know the buy-in of every tournament and they know how much everybody cashed for in any tournament. They would probably know the all-time number of buy-ins won by a person. And I wonder what that list looks like.
That'd be interesting. A lot of work, probably.
Yeah, because you divide the price by the buy-in, and you can see how many total buy-ins won. I'm sure guys like, you mentioned Carlos Morton. Obviously, like Phil Hellmuth would be very close to the top of that list, I'm sure, because he won a ton of buy-ins, played a ton of volume. But that would be an interesting one too. It doesn't, but again, none of this proves anything. It's just a different way of measuring something that is immeasurable, which is who has the best tournament resume. It's not a measurable thing because you have to put some sort of qualification on it.
Right. A lot of people argue, and I always see this every time it comes up, in the comments, people that don't really know poker that well, they're like, well, we need to see the actual number with, minus the buy-ins, right? And publish that. I'm like, first of all, it's actually impossible because we don't have that data, but more importantly, there's another underlying reason why that's a bad idea, right? You don't necessarily want to show, especially the losing players, like who's stuck the most. I remember the World Poker Tour, and I think it was like the first 100 tournaments. They did have a list where you could see number of events played and number of, amount cashed for, and you could see like the big minuses or stuff. And that just embarrasses the wrong kind of people. And ultimately, it's people's personal business. Like they should be able to opt in and opt out, I guess, if you wanted to do that. But yeah, and then you'd have to get every single venue across the entire world to agree, and it's just not feasible. So I'm one of the few who actually, as we know, posts my results every year, but that shouldn't be expected of anyone, except for, and I can't remember who tweeted this. Somebody probably doesn't like me, but whatever. Because he doesn't follow me, so I just assume. Said something like, is this a new thing where players have to? Art Papazan, I think it was. Is this a new thing where poker players have to reveal their winnings? Hard pass. And I said, I don't think most people should, but if you teach poker at all, if you are a coach, if you do a training site, if you offer any content and say, here, listen to me, I'm credible. I think, and I'm in that space. I think it makes sense to be like, well, let's see. Are you? Like I'm learning from you, but like, are you even good? Like, can you win yourself? I think
or if you're asking to be staked, if you're asking to be staked, I think then you used to see that back in the day. People go on 2+2 and say like, hey, nobody knows me, but like, here are my results. Like, here's the link to my Shark Scope, which used to track the online results. And, I've got this much ROI over the years. So go ahead and back me for these tournaments, and people can at least make an informed decision.
You're right. Anybody sells action on Poker Stake or whatever, if you're selling action, having transparency with your actual results so people know like, oh, I'm charging 1.3, but like, let's look at your ROI. Is it 1.3? That's why in GG, within the software in GG Poker, when people do sell, because you can sell within the site and the smart contract, it happens immediately. The buyers can look at the price you list, and they can look at your tournament database. They can look at your PokerCraft, and they can look back and see what you've done within the site and see what your ROI is and all these kind of things. And they can decide for themselves whether or not they think it's a good buy or not.
Tis the season. This isn't in the show notes, but I just wanted to quickly get Terrence's take on this. The season of anticipation. Danny, you already mentioned it. The World Series of Poker is coming up. The grind is going to start. And I'm
so excited. Just before we started the show, I'm just begging Daniel for little tidbits of information that he can leak to me. So yes, this is the season.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I wanted to ask about, because we've been talking a little bit about limit hold'em specific, right? I mean, obviously it's a small niche, but you're pretty excited about the limit hold'em stuff that's coming up this year.
Yeah, limit hold'em and draw. That's what I play. So yeah, those are the two games that I feel comfortable in. I only have, when I was 25 and single and had no kids, then I could just go to the World Series and play every event that I want. That's when I played a lot. I mean, I probably the most. I never put in Daniel like volume, but I probably played 30 events. There was a couple of summers in there, but yeah, now I don't feel comfortable at no limit hold'em anymore, like at the highest level, because if you follow Daniel and his vlogs and stuff, and you follow the stakes, the high stakes strategy, like I don't have time to sit there and grind solvers and put in work and figure out like what are the bet sizes for every flop and every turn card. Like, and not only that, I don't enjoy a lot of what no limit hold'em has become with the very excessive balanced time taking. The fact that you play 14 hands an hour. So I basically play limit hold'em and I play draw, because those games go very fast and they're fun, and you can get like, you're playing, say, triple draw. It's 6-handed, so you're automatically like playing a very large percentage of hands. You're making decisions all the time. So those are the events. Those are the events that I enjoy playing. Even like no limit single draw, even though I'm not very good at it, I'm willing to play it because it doesn't. Daniel, you could speak to whether or not this is accurate, but it seems like the bleeding of the way people are super balanced in their time tanking and taking like 10 seconds to tank on trivial decisions is not as bad in something like no limit single draw, partly because there's two streets, but partly also because like you can balance your play by squeezing and noting pips, and you don't have to like sit there and like pretend to look at the turn card and pretend to think about what you're doing for 15 seconds before you act. I hate that part of live poker now, but I still do love live poker. I just wish that wasn't a part of it.
Yeah, I think it depends what circle you're playing in. Sometimes it's better or worse. But like you said, one of the things I think that I would push back on is the events that you would play if you're playing like 1500s and the 2500s and like that. The idea that you would need to ever look at a solver, I just completely squash that. You don't. Like, you're a smart guy. You can watch what other people are doing. You can figure it out. Like, what sizes should I be using? Watch what the pros are using. Copy it. You know what I mean? That's like, there's one, I won't mention him. This is a Euro pro. He's very good. But I asked him about that. He's like, I don't look solid, but I copy everybody else. And he's literally he is one of the top crushers in the high stakes. He doesn't look at solvers himself. He watches the feeds. He watches the sizes people are choosing. He thinks about them critically, and then he implements them, right? Like, but I agree with you in the idea of all this sort of like, balanced tanking thing. In one of the recent videos I did on YouTube, I actually tried to sort of explain the benefits of checking in the dark in shot clock tournaments, right? So in a shot clock tournament, if I'm out of position in a spot where I've been 3-bet, right? Let's say I've raised middle position, the guy 3-bets me from the button, and flop comes, I'm not leading any flops, right? So what's the benefit of me checking in the dark? What do I give up? Nothing. All I'm telling you is that I don't have a leading range. But guess what I do get to do, all right? Let's say this player needs time. If I tank for 20 seconds, he gets that time. Then he gets 30 seconds more. I check immediately. It's on you, buddy. You got 30. I don't give him that extra free time to think. So if he needs more time, he might have to use a time bank. He might be more apt to make mistakes and stuff like that. But I will say that it's not a perfect solution because there are issues and ways you can manipulate a shot clock, but it does help a ton. It really does, you know, with a lot, like, because whatever, okay, someone's going to waste your time. They're wasting 20, 25 seconds, or, you know, even half that, because it takes sometimes 10 seconds to act. So you're wasting an extra 15 or 20. You know, that's reasonable-ish. And if you want to waste more, you actually have to pay a commodity, which is a time bank.
Yeah.
I can hear people out there who play the main event casually. And Terrence, you know, you've got a lot of experience playing, you know, no limit. Maybe it's been a while, but you do have a lot of experience. So guys out there are like, wait a second, I'm going to plop down 10K for the dream and I'm going to play super deep. And Terrence doesn't even want to play. Like, is this, are we at the point?
I mean, I'm a net, and also like I would play the main event if I had the time to take off for it. I've got family obligations. So like making it, you know, the main event, you know, you've got the starting flights and then you've got multiple days off. So it's a really long commitment. So I would play the main event if you took that exact field and made it like a 10K that lasts like 3 days long, and it had all of the stuff surrounding it, I'd play that tournament. I don't think I'm outclassed in the main event. That being said, like, it's not just about maybe looking at solvers, but it's also about, so you talk about this anonymous German guy who doesn't ever look at a solver, but he still studies.
He's definitely not German. He's definitely
you didn't say German? I thought you said German.
European.
European.
Every German wakes up in the morning before they brush their teeth. They go, whoa, let me see. What do I do in this spot? 42% frequency. And while they're brushing their teeth, they're still doing something.
Okay, sorry. Anonymous, non-German European, somewhere from elsewhere in continental Europe. He still studies. Like he studies in a different way. You know, he's watching guys, what they're doing. I just don't have the time to sort of put into no limit hold'em to get to a level I'm comfortable at. I think in other mixed games I can, because I think the state of the art is just not as advanced in mixed games because there's not all this technology, and there's not, frankly, because there's not as much money. I mean, sure, people are out there playing, you know, 1,000, 2,000 Badesi, like it does happen, but the combination of like the technology, the money that's available, the amount of like the high number of really intelligent people that are, you know, in groups and chatting and sort of like figuring out all of this stuff. I don't have the time to put into that. I can sort of get pretty good at some mixed games and try to make that my focus for a while. And like I said, I think mixed games are kind of more fun because they go at a much faster pace, because there's no shot. The thing is, there's no shot clock in limit hold'em. There's no shot clock in triple draw, but the culture of it is just different. Like, it's just not expected.
Triple draw. Do you like Badugi?
Yes. I mean, I like Badugi. One of the things I don't like about Badugi is actually probably how badly it eats up the bad players. Because if you're like kind of a mediocre bad triple draw player playing in the 1500, like you can still cash, you can do okay, you can make a deep run and get lucky. If you're like a mediocre bad Badugi player, you're drawing like really, really thin. Because if you just have like 5, 7, 8, and the other guy just has ace deuce 4, like you're in a lot of trouble. Well, that's less the case in triple draw. Like in deuce 7 triple draw, you can play like a little bit too rough. You can play like a little bit wrong and like just get lucky. You know, if we're both 1-1 going in the final draw, you have 3, 5, 6, 8, and I have 2, 3, 4, 7. Like, I'm not that big a favorite. But in Badugi, because like the best 3 card just beats the second best 3 card so much, I think it's a worse game for the bad players. But I enjoy playing Badugi when it spreads.
Yeah, no question. I guess a simplified way to say it is like when the starting hands that you start with end up being the actual hand you have,
right,
a decent clip, then just by that alone, starting better hands makes you a favorite, right? But it's because a lot of people were clamoring for a Badugi tournament, and it is.
Yeah, I think it's best in the mix format. I don't think like as its own. I think it's just like people who are bad at Badugi they're just in terrible shape.
I think you know what? Listen, if they want a Badugi event, let them have one Badugi event. We'll see. I'm not saying there is one, but I'm not saying there's not.
Well, that's what's known as a tease in the business, right there.
I know. Now I have to harass you offline again.
We talked about traveling earlier. Daniel, you were in Calgary, Alberta. Is that correct? A quick little jump.
I was there. I actually had a blast. Like normally I do these events. You know, I've done events where I MC a tournament or I do some charity related stuff and things like that. This one was really a lot of fun. I have on my fantasy team several of the Calgary Flames. So I got to meet them. I got to meet a kid named Jacob Pelletier, who was sort of reamed by his coach. Not reamed, but like mocked by his coach, Daryl Sutter. For those that don't know, there was a clip where there's sort of a brouhaha in Calgary where Daryl Sutter doesn't play young guys. He's not about it, right? So Pelletier plays in his first game, and the media obviously asked, "What did you think of Pelletier?"
It's great. It was classic Sutter. I love Sutter.
Yeah, he does the whole spiel. He grabs a piece of paper, grabs his glasses, and he goes, "What number is he?" And he goes, 6 minutes of play, 2 shots, 1 hit, 1 block. Like, it's just like, what? So look, I got to talk to Pelletier, nice kid. I talked to Daryl Sutter as well. Met a lot of the guys. What I decided to do is like do some giveaways. I go around to each table. And what they did was because all the Calgary Flames were there, every one of them. So each table, they were wearing a jersey and they had a bounty that, if you bust them and stuff like that. But I would go table to table and I would sort of do some trivia questions, and often related to the player at the table. For example, I'll be like, whose last name in Italian means eat bread? Right? Mangiapane is the guy.
Yeah.
And another one, like,
there is.
I had Joel Otto, who's an old-time player.
Okay, you're traumatized.
No, Joel Otto. Yeah, anybody who's born before 1989 from Vancouver
kicked it in. He kicked it in.
Okay, so Joel Otto was there, and I went to his table, and I basically asked the table, all right, what is his career high in goals in 1 year, right? And then people are like 50. I'm like, I said Joel Otto, not Sidney Crosby. You know what I mean?
Guy who's literally famous for taking face-offs.
But I did run into one, and I went up to Lanny McDonald's table, who I've met several times. What a great guy. He's really
This is the greatest name dropping ever, by the way. I'm loving every moment.
Well, I'm just telling you, it's not.
No, I'm loving it. I love it.
So Lanny McDonald, he's a great guy. I've met him several times. I go to his table. So I'm, for his table, I'm like, let me go curious what his like high mark is, just
Wait, can we guess?
Yeah.
You're asking Lanny McDonald's
career high in goals in one season.
That's closer to 50.
46.
That's correct.
He told me the number. I looked at the number and was like, what? This had to be a mistake. He scored 66 one season. But he did say like half of them went on and off his ass, being humble as he is. But had a great time. A lot of the guys had a lot of drinks. I tell you what, if I was betting Chicago at Calgary, a couple nights later, I would have been all over Chicago because Calgary was -400 and those guys were smashed. I ended up playing in a tournament there with the guys, a few of the Calgary guys, and people who bought a donation to play. And then I got up heads up with Jonathan Huberdeau. And
That's awesome.
He beat me all in 5 or 6 in a row. He won all in. And I'm like, okay, well, it doesn't matter. And then I ended up beating him because whatever, I'm good, But it was like, he's a lot of fun. The group is a lot of fun. I find them very easy to root for. In fact, I hope that they make the playoffs. I really do. And I hope that they supplant Vegas. I hope Vegas misses the playoffs. Like every time they lose, it makes me happy because it's the only way to solve a problem is if you stop living in mediocrity. So anyway, that's a sidebar, but it was a blast. I had a good time with a lot of the peeps there and it was a quick trip. I flew in the night before, was drinking beer all day. Like I just survived on beer. And then I flew out the very next morning.
Yeah, Calgary's a great poker town. Adam and I have both played there a bunch too. And, they're a sleeper poker town. It's not a place that people know of as a destination. It's not Atlantic City. It's not Vegas. It's not even Tunica, but it's a sleeper of a poker town. They've always loved poker there. So, cool to see you go out there and, you probably don't head north of the border all that often these days.
I don't head anywhere all that often, right? Like I really don't travel. I mean, it's like for me to travel, the trip was actually supposed to be Toronto for a few days and then Calgary, but the Toronto leg got sort of, kibosh. That would have been tough for me, doing back to back and, feeling like I have energy. But overall, like I said, I really don't plan to travel anywhere until after the World Series of Poker. I'm not going to Vietnam. I'm not doing any of these. I may after the World Series of Poker if it fits. Who knows? Maybe I'll go back to World Series Europe. I kind of like it. I know people think it's nuts to say that because whatever. There may be a Triton in my future after World Series, but until then, like I'm actually genuinely dedicated to getting back in shape because I did let myself go a little bit, which is fine. I don't mind doing that because I know I have a plan. I know how to get back in shape. So that's kind of fun and exciting in my life. Kind of boring for most people.
It's fun to hear the stories. Daryl Sutter is the best. I love him. I love his cantankerous attitude that he takes.
Oh, he even said he's like, I love Pelletier. He's a good kid. It wasn't about him.
He's just and it's just his way. He makes you earn your stripes. But little poker twist on it. So Dan Idemo, my brother, was playing in the Memorial Cup in 2002 or 2003. It was in Kelowna, and there's a beer garden set up outside in the parking lot, and I'm standing there with Dan's dad, I think, and we're having some beers, and I went to turn and I bumped into a guy who's at a table right behind. It's stand up, so it's not sit down, and we're standing up in a beer garden type thing. And it's Daryl Sutter. I ran into Daryl Sutter in a beer garden and kind of spilled a little bit of beer on him. And I thought, oh, this is bad. And he just started talking to us. He asked us where we were from. Like, he was just the nicest guy. He just wanted to hear.
He just has like, you ever heard the term like resting bitch face?
Yeah.
He has like resting, like grumpy face. Like even when he's not mad, he just looks like he's grumpy.
Oh yeah, but he's the nicest guy. He's just great. He's just a real person, and it's awesome. I love it. All right, one thing to get excited about, everybody. Get your PokerGo subscription. If you don't have it, there's a bonus code I'm sure that we can come up with for PokerGo. But whatever, sign up for PokerGo, because High Stakes Poker Season 10 is upon us. Everybody's favorite poker television is back for another year, and the lineup looks awesome to start. Daniel, I know, is it a spoiler to say you might have played this year? Or are we
No, I played. Yeah, it's okay to say.
And it's just fantastic. It's everybody's favorite poker on television that I know. The cash game is great. And this year was, I haven't watched it yet, so I don't know if anybody else did. If you guys watched it, the lineup looked awesome. I think the lineup was Jennifer Tilly, JRB, Eric Person, of course, famous for getting into it with Mr. Phil Hellmuth, Matt Hanks, the Owl, Bobby Baldwin. How great is that? Emma Zajmovic and Chino Reem, I believe, was the last one. So a really fun lineup. Looked like I can't wait to sit down and watch the episode. But the big news to come out of it was that Gabe Kaplan has retired from being a commentator on High Stakes Poker. This was his last episode. He came back for the first episode of season 10 to sort of have a farewell with him and AJ Benza. It's interesting. Like, I don't think you would call Gabe a classic broadcaster in any type of the definition or any sense of the definition, but for poker players, it's that warm blanket that we love. Hearing him, say, just talk about different hands, talk about different people. You go back and you just love to hear him. And it's going to be sad that he's gone. I'm not sure what the reason is, because he seems like a guy that could still keep on doing it. It's not like he's running marathons, but he's made the decision to step down. Terrence, was that sort of bittersweet for a guy like yourself that does enjoy it as well?
Yeah, I think it's such a fantastic and selfless move by a guy like Gabe to know that, he like you said, Adam, he could have gone on and done this forever and kind of hung on. And we've seen that in entertainment and in commentary. We're sports fans, we're hockey fans. We don't name names, but we're aware of commentators that have hung on longer past their expiration date. And it's good that we'll have
all anybody.
What's that?
Bob Cole, anybody?
Yeah. So Gabe, we'll have only the good memories. And I think that's fantastic. We'll have the good memories of High Stakes Poker. Daniel put up the commentary I saw of the 97 Stu Unger outside on Fremont Street. Everybody sweating their balls off. I had no idea Gabe did that. I mean, I probably would have if I really, really thought about it. But that was super cool. I mean, we'll have so many great memories to see. He'll pass the torch on to someone that I'm sure is amazing. I don't know what information is available about his particular replacement. I know that Gabe's made a couple of jokes on it about it on Twitter. So, but I think it's great that he's going out on his terms. Super happy about it.
Yeah, I don't think people realize this, but obviously since the poker boom, we've seen a lot of different celebrities playing poker, right? Some even sponsored by sites and whatnot. Back in those days, there were two famous people that played poker. One was Telly Savalas, Kojak. And then there was Gabe Kaplan, who was super famous. The people don't know this. Like Welcome Back, Kotter was like a really big show. It was like, the sitcom of sitcoms with John Travolta and many others. And so he was a big name. So for him to be involved in poker in the way that he was, and he loved the game and was like a real player, I think he'd won a bracelet or something along the lines, and him contributing, I think, even before the boom, that started to plant the seed a little bit. So he sort of was around before all that sort of happened. And then when it did, when High Stakes Poker came around, I mean, there was literally no better fit. That Gabe Kaplan was the absolute perfect person for this. Him and AJ had a great rapport. I
remember thinking, you mentioned AJ. I remember thinking, like, especially the first season, like, what is this guy doing? Who's AJ Benza and why is he doing it? But they turned out to be the perfect pair, right?
They were. And I think what people miss, right? It's a lot of people that just come into poker now or in the last couple of years, and the way in which they think about the game or the way they talk about the game or the language that they use, SPR. What is an SPR? I mean, stack to pot ratio. Like, Aunt Betty doesn't know this, right? Gabe was the perfect fit because the show was on it was on the Game Show Network. Okay. Yeah. So the Game Show Network, who's the target audience there? You know, you have a lot of people like, you know, that are a little older. They're not like young GTO wizards and stuff like that. And he was funny. He always elevated the drama. They both did. You know, I think that's like, and I said this to one commentator who hates me, but like,
a lot of people hating you today.
What you don't do, yeah, it's fine. What you don't want to ever do is like make something seem easy and simplistic. You want to build it up, and Gabe does that. He makes the moments big, and the drama in which Maury created with the show and having Gabe, it was the perfect storm. And I'm happy to see the show is back. I wish, for poker's sake, that it would be behind, not behind the paywall with Poker Go, but such is life. Somebody's got to pay the bills, and a lot of people don't understand the intricacies of how these shows get made. Back in the old days, you make a poker show, Full Tilt or Stars, or somebody was going to give you money to run it, right? That don't happen no more like it did. So there's no value in that. So it becomes more difficult. But the show itself is still really, really great. You have to compete now with live streams, right? And for me, high stakes poker is far better than live streams because I don't ever want to sit and watch poker for 8 hours straight with all the mundane like raise folds and stuff. Give me the cliffs, you know, take that 8 hour show, build it into like 2 really good 45-minute episodes with all the fun, right? And that's what high stakes poker is for, you know, much better for the casual fan. And for me, from an entertainment perspective, just, you know, much better show period.
Well, because of the format, it's almost timeless, right? Like, yeah, you mentioned the paywall situation, but because it's edited, because it's great, like you can go back and watch season 2, season 3, whatever, and enjoy it. This content will still be, you know, somewhat enjoyable even 3, 4, 5 years from now, if it does get to a point where it is in demand and people want to watch it, right? But getting back to AJ, I mean, the part that I loved about AJ was he didn't have an ego about his poker knowledge. Like he would always defer or make jokes about it, or, you know, he's so good at ribbing Gabe and them ribbing each other. Like it was just like two buddies.
I mean, he was like the average viewer. Like he was perfect. He's like, I'm the average viewer from New Jersey going, what's this guy doing over here? What's he doing with this? You know, what's he doing there? And that's what the average viewer does. They're not asking for like, you know, balancing ranges and stuff like that. And Gabe had the wit and humor to needle him in such a way that wasn't patronizing to the audience or to AJ. It was just fun, you know? And it was at a time where you could be a little more lax with humor. You didn't have to worry as much about, you know, stepping on the wrong toes.
I wonder how that meshing. I wonder how AJ is going to mesh, or does he stay, long term, or how it works with Gabe's replacement. We're not talking about that, right?
Who it is?
Yeah.
No, I think it's gonna be revealed next week, right? Or
okay.
You know, soon after this airs. I think the shows air on Monday, and this will probably come out on Monday. So I don't know.
Yeah, I just wonder how AJ would mesh with somebody other than Gabe, given all the things that made their partnership so good. But we'll see, I guess, coming up. All right, moving on. There was an incident in Rozvadov. We mentioned Rozvadov earlier. This ties into it. A World Series of Poker circuit event there. There was a final table. It was being streamed, shown on television, and 2 players got money all in on a turn. One had 10 Jack, one had King Jack on the board of Ace Queen 6 Jack. So the King Jack was out kicking the 10 Jack. They got the money in. And a 6 came on the river, pairing the bottom card. So the King Jack now, the kicker didn't play because it was 2 pair with an ace kicker. But the player with the 10 Jack stood up, high-fived everybody, and thought he'd lost the pot. It was, one of those things where you got to be, you would think the player who's all in would know what cards he needs, what his outs, but he didn't for whatever reason. And the dealer didn't notice it either. And the player thought he was eliminated, stood up. Well, he was eliminated because he ended up leaving the table, and they dealt the next hand, in which case it's over. And we can't go back after that point. The dealer didn't notice it. And I guess, I find it hard to believe that none of the players at the table noticed it, but they have an incentive, obviously, the final table, to have somebody leave the game, whether it's right or wrong. I wonder if I know, Terrence, you're on top of that. Daniel, I know you saw this too. Your thoughts on what we can do and what's the responsibility here. And I know we'll talk maybe a little bit about the statement of the tournament director here. I didn't like what he said, but first thoughts, Daniel. What did you think about the hand there?
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to go to Terrence first, but that's okay. Because so here's my issue. I'm a big believer that when there is a stream table, the rules for that stream table should be the same as the rules for every other table. Okay. Right. So every other table doesn't have the access of people doing commentary. It doesn't have extra eyes watching. It doesn't have a production team making sure that the action is right, and that this person got the right chip and stuff like that. So based on that, right, because I think a lot of people are trying to say that there should be some sort of refund or ICM thing like that. If this had happened at any other table that wasn't televised, which it does, this stuff does happen. People misread their hand, turn it up, nobody sees it, and they realize, oh my God. The rule is quite clear that once the next hand is dealt, it's dealt. Now, a lot of people bringing up the fact that the guys in the booth, well, they must have manually had to change this. The question from their perspective is, should the production, right, who's supposed to be we were always told it was like a fly on the wall, right? They're not there. They're just a fly on the wall watching what's actually happening. Should they interfere in a decision that has a monetary effect on some of the players, or should it be, within the realm of the players at the table, the player themselves, and the dealer to be responsible as they would be on any other table that's not televised? So as sucky as it is, and again, I'm not going to debate the statement necessarily being what I would say, but overall, I just don't think there's any responsibility past what's done, because again, I'm a firm believer that if you can get massages at the side tables, you should be able to get a massage at the feature table. If you can have access to your phone when you're playing, regular game, you should have your phone, at tables too. So again, the real question is, what responsibility does the production part have in terms of monitoring, the rules of the game? And I think it's probably easier and cleaner if they don't have any say, they don't have any influence. Because I
totally agree with that. I want to put it to you guys. We'll go on this topic and then something else, but because Daniel brought it up. Imagine you were a reporter, so imagine you're not a professional poker player. You're just a sideline reporter. Your job is to write down, as we see these guys at the final table. Suppose you're at this final table and you're writing down this hand and you're writing down the board and the cards that are turned over, and you realize, hey, that's an ace kicker that plays there. Would you say anything? I wouldn't if I was a poker reporter.
Absolutely not. You're influencing the action as a flyer.
So I kind of asking the production people to jump out of the booth and go like, hey, that's a chop pot. It's a very similar thing. So I do agree with you. I know guys like Matt Berkey disagree. They think there should have bbeen some level of intervention or.
Well, Matt Berkey's wrong though.
Yeah, that's why I kind of put it to you this way. It's because it's kind of a parallel. Should a random person who's supposed to be, as you say, a fly in the wall, whose job is to cover the event, should they say it? So my thoughts on this situation, as Daniel said, these things happen. These things all happen all the time. If you've played even a couple of years of live poker, you've seen pots get pushed wrong, and you've seen it. And Adam sort of suggested it's in everybody's best interest, and there's been a lot of the suggestions that people looked the other way intentionally. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. Maybe some of them saw it, maybe they didn't. That's on them. At the end of the day, I don't want to go around throwing accusations at any, because you're implicitly sort of saying to the five guys who were left at this table, hey, you guys kind of behaved in a scummy way because you knew you were level up. But
sorry, let me just retract. I don't know that it's scummy for a player not to point it out. In a cash game, to your point about earlier, when in a cash game, if a pot gets pushed the wrong way and I'm sitting at the other end of the table, it's not up to me. It's not up to me. At all.
I think it kind of is. I mean, we can have this discussion. I mean, it's in the World Series rules, I think, that they said if you realize a mistake's being made, you're supposed to speak up.
Oh, sorry,
yeah, you're supposed to. But here, so I agree. So that's the thing. Is the morally correct thing to do is to do that. Also, the morally correct thing to do is not to stall egregiously and do a lot of different things. But but really, so the analogy I'm going to make is, if I'm at the table and that money means something to me, you're asking me to do something that's against my financial interest when I could just sit there and say nothing.
Yeah.
So so the idea that the rule is there, which allows any other player to say something, is good, right? Every other player has the right on a tabled hand to call the right winner, right? But as a responsibility where they must, that's a totally different.
That is in the World Series rules, though. At least the ones that I've read. That says
it doesn't say you have to. It says that you. I don't know.
It says any participant in the hand or not should speak up if he or she thinks a mistake is being made in the reading of hands.
Does it? Okay.
That's the one I have. This is from 2021, so I don't have the 2022 one. But I mean, I can't imagine it's changed in the last 2 years, and we didn't know about it.
The bottom line is
it's actually Rule 69.
Yeah, but the bottom line is any rule like that, first of all, it's unenforceable. You can't say you must have.
Yeah.
So the whole point is, you never want to put the onus on the players themselves.
Agreed.
Right? So the onus is on the player whose hand is live, they're themselves, the dealer as well, right? Everyone else at the table is just extra gravy. If somebody just wants to do the right thing, they have every right to, and they shouldn't be like, protested against. Because I know I play sometimes in side games, or I used to play, in mixed games in Bobby's room or whatever, and we didn't really do that. Like, if somebody was, screwed up and folded half the pot or whatever, nobody really said nothing. It was just kind of like, whatever. That's on you. Like, if you, it's sort of like a personal responsibility to you. But I think,
it's. I wonder. I was at a. I wonder. I mean, I think people ought to speak up in that situation. Like, I guess the thing that I think about is, let's say you watched one of these guys comes over, you're in a tournament and you're one of these guys, and you're in the final table too, and on breaks it, somebody comes up and says, "Hey, Daniel, you saw that split pot, right?" And Daniel's like, and say you were looking at your phone, not doing whatever, and you legitimately didn't see it. And you said, "No, I didn't see it." He's like, "Yeah, that hand the guy busted fifth on, like that was a split pot." Would you think less of that guy? I kind of would a little.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah,
I would. Because I would never do that. Like, if I saw, the rightful winner, I would 100% say something. But but I'm in a different position. I'm financially stable. I have never cared about money, even when I didn't have money. Like, it mattered to me. But I won't begrudge somebody who, if they acted like that, sure. I think the best play is, if you're going to scum, just don't say nothing. Like, don't go, "Hey, Bly, do you see that?"
Well, you might be right. That's about intelligence, not about ethics. But yes.
Yeah. But listen, again, like, ultimately, if you're in a huge ICM spot and this is going to make you an extra $150,000 or $200,000, it's a difficult pill to swallow to say, like, you should, to put the
okay, fair. I mean,
when shutting up, like, I agree, everyone should do the right thing, but because they're not they don't have to. Like, so it's a hard rule to enforce.
Okay. Well, I'm glad I brought this up with you guys, because I'm always open to the idea that, like, I may be wrong about the ethics of things or whatever. So I don't know. People have different opinions about that, and I think that's fine. But anyway, these things happen. Mistakes get made. Dealers make mistakes. They're human. Pots get rewarded wrong. This is unfortunate because it happened on such a big stage, because it happened at a World Series event, a circuit event, because it happened at a final table for big money, relatively large money. It's really unfortunate, and everybody caught in the stream. What is terrible about it is how they handled it. And I know, Adam, the I don't know what's this guy's title, Freddie. I don't know what his title is, but he issued a statement. I guess he's like the director of poker or whatever. And he issued a statement, and I thought it was arguably the worst crafted statement in the history of public relations, to be perfectly honest. Yeah. I know you don't want to read the whole thing, but if you do want to read it, it's we'll link to it, I guess. But he does everything other than sort of accept responsibility. And I agree with Daniel as well. I don't think this guy's like owed ICM money. A lot of people come out and said that he's owed ICM money. It's like, no, his right to protest ended when he walked away from the table and the next hand started getting shuffled and was dealt, because that's the rule. Like, you can't go back in time to a hand once you've already started the next hand. Like, his statute of limitation ends there. So I don't think he deserves anything. It really sucks. It's a shitty deal. If they want to do the right thing, not the right thing, but if they want to compensate him somehow, cool. That's awesome. I think that's great, because at the end of the day, your staff did make an error. But errors happen, and it's not that they owe him anything. It's just that the way they handled it is just without any sort of like accepting of responsibility and blame. And here's, if this guy's out there, Freddie Brunato, I think that's his name. Federico Brunato, that's his name. Federico, if you're out there, this is how you issue an apology when you fucked up. You say, "I fucked up. We fucked up. This is terrible. This is wrong. We got to make sure this doesn't happen again. We really screwed up. Please accept our apologies." What you don't do is you go, "Hey, these dealers that we have are really great. They undergo this training courses. And this particular dealer that we have, whose name is so-and-so, by the way, she's really great. So you shouldn't blame her either. By the way, poker's one of these things where he could have got eliminated on the next hand anyway." And it literally says that. It actually says, like, hey, maybe this guy would have gone on to win the circuit ring, or maybe he would have been eliminated in the next hand. We don't know. We'll never know. Oh, well, that's life. That's poker. Goes on to say things like, he goes on to lecture us about one of the most important rules of poker is to always read your hand. He goes on to lecture the other players at the table. We just finished having a lengthy conversation, the three of us, about whether the other players are responsible. He goes ahead and says the other players are absolutely responsible. Hey, they should have read the hand too. It's really unfortunate that they didn't read the hand. Goes on to quote the rule that I just said is the right to dispute a hand ends when the next hand begins, which is technically correct. Okay, it's absolutely correct. There's another rule at the table which says that cards speak when they're turned over at showdown. He goes on, he lectures people. He says, I strongly advise the poker community not to criticize other people's mistakes and not to try and find guilt and learn from this and know your rights and follow the game. It's lecture after lecture about how everybody else but him accepts responsibility. And then at the very end, he says, I take full responsibility for any mistakes that recur within my team. Within my team. Oh, I'm sorry that these scrubs I have working for me fucked up. This is the most bullshit, irresponsible. And, I'm not going to expect Daniel to call this out because he actually has to go to Rozvadov and probably has to meet this guy. So I'm going to do it because I'm not going to go to Rozvadov. So this is just the most bullshit statement. Federico, own your shit.
I wonder how much of his English as a second language, because I read this.
No. Because if you go to his Twitter, he speaks he at least writes English very well. I don't know how well he speaks English, but he writes English extremely well.
It's horribly written. It's wrong. It's just.
If you look at his tweets where he gets called out by people, they're all very grammatically correct. He does English he's good English fine. This is not
Honestly,
a
when I look deeper though, you say own his shit, and I always think it's always important people own their shit, but there's really not a lot of shit to own here. There's really not. He's a tournament guy, whatever. It's the dealer missed it.
So there's two things I think that needs to own. First, why isn't there a tournament director at the final table? It's a final table.
Yep.
Well, the tournament director the tournament director is not supposed to say anything either. And
what?
As far as I'm concerned, absolutely not. Tournament director should not say anything.
If there's a guy in a suit standing behind the dealer when there's a pot about to get pushed the wrong way.
So here's why. Again, going back to my basic. Hold on. Let me explain.
Okay.
Going back to my basic principle that side tables and the featured table should be under the exact same rules for the entirety of the tournament, right? There is not a tournament director at each one of these tables. He's not there. His position is not about, rewarding the right pot. That's on the dealer and the players, unless it specifically says somewhere in the language of the rules that the tournament director can and should overrule in that spot. I think, that they should and could, but in this spot.
Okay. Why is it the case then? Why is it every final table I've ever played at, and you've played more final tables than me, when there's an all in, that guy in the suit goes, let's say the short stack doubles, that guy in the suit goes over the short stack, helps the dealer count out how many chips, make sure to get the exact amount, tells the dealer the exact amount, 1.275 million. Make sure 1.275 million gets cut out from the big stack. They break that stack down. I've seen this and you've seen this. The tournament director absolutely assists the dealer.
You shouldn't, is what I'm saying. You shouldn't. Tournament director should be called. So I believe this, right? The dealer and the players at the table. The only reason I say that is because, again, then you're going to create unbalanced situations where some tables have a tournament director and others don't. So then they'll be protected and the others won't. So I'm a big believer in everything being even keel. So the question is, would the rules be the same if the tournament director has a say in this? And I think a tournament director is somebody who's supposed to settle disputes. So you call the floor, tournament director comes over, he rules. But outside of that, I don't think it's on them. I think it's on the dealer. And sometimes the dealer is going to make a mistake, and the players at the table and the player themselves.
But the reason that there isn't a tournament director at every table is because it's a manpower situation. It's just not logistically possible. But when you're down to a final table, why wouldn't you just have an accurate
You have your best dealer there, right?
Why wouldn't you have as accurate an outcome as you can get?
You can do that. What I'm talking about specifically is, let's say, for example, aside from a final table, let's say there are 3 tables, right? One of them is being streamed, right? The other 2 are not. I can totally get behind what you guys are saying. If at the final table, now the tournament director is fully, invested. But prior to that, I think he should just only come to a table when asked to settle a dispute.
The other issue, I disagree on you that, but we can let it go. I would agree at if it just happens to be a feature table on day 1 of the main event or something like that, then I agree there's no special privileges. I do think Adam's right. Final tables are different because they're final tables.
I'm actually, like I said, I can get behind that. So I don't know that we disagree. I just like, again, what matters to me is every table's played.
Yeah. And I also think we should be able to get massages at TV tables. The other thing that I took issue with is, I don't know how much you guys saw, but this hand was deleted from the live stream. I believe is still deleted from the live stream. I tried to find it and I can't. I still think I think it has been deleted. So all you can find is sort of other people reposting it. That's not an ownership of your mistake. In my opinion, like that's, and not only did they do that, I believe the moderators blocked the chat of everybody who's went in the chat and say like, hey, there's a fuck up, because, on live stream, there's all these people chatting. All these comments have been deleted. All the chat has been deleted. That is not accountability. That's not owning your mistake.
I couldn't agree with you more, because what you're essentially doing when you do that is you're burying the body. But if you don't think you did anything wrong, why would you have to bury a body? Right? If you're not responsible, it's not on you, then what's the point of burying a body if there's no fault on your own? So it makes you look, even if you were innocent, it makes you look guilty. Like if I put something together and put a clip and I deleted one part of it, why did he do that? So again, I agree wholeheartedly that the idea of like this mistake happened, trying to bury it, I get why they would want to do that, because they don't want the negative backlash that they've got as a result. But ultimately, you just got to let it be out there. It's in the world now.
All right, next rules discussion. You guys ready for round two? Most of the poker world is a lot of the poker world is in the Bahamas at the Poker Stars tournament, PCA, PCS, PC, whatever the heck it is called these days. Not 100% sure, but in the main event of said tournament series in the Bahamas, Paulina Lolager, who's known as the Poker Bunny, I think she's been in the news in previous
former caller inner of this here show.
Oh, that's right.
I was thinking about that earlier. I think that might be like the first time she ever forayed into
that might have been like
media.
the first public opinion with Poker Bunny. It's before she was even Poker Bunny.
We were all very impressed.
Yeah,
I recall.
She understands GTO. When you talk about people who understand GTO, that's her.
Yes. She was in the main event, the 10K buy-in in the Poker Stars tournament, and she ended up calling, and somebody was there with video to take video of this. She ended up calling off all her chips, and the other player in the hand turned their hand over. Paulina lost the hand. So she went to bury her hand in, again, this is a tournament, so the all-in rule here does apply, but she didn't show her hand. She buried her hand in the muck. And then sort of, I couldn't exactly, I watched it a few times, I'm trying to figure out what she was doing, but she reached in to the rest of the muck or the stub or something, and the dealer, and kind of fought the dealer a little bit with her hands to try and, I don't know if she was rabbit hunting or what she was looking for or stuff.
No, she was trying to wrestle the cards back from it. So
but it wasn't her hand anymore. Anyway, whatever. There was some sort of weird exchange. And, obviously stuff like this happens, as we were saying, this, people misread their hand and leave tournaments and do all kinds of stuff all the time. Somebody was there because it's the Poker Bunny, and she's somebody who will get.
Well, and it was in the bubble.
What's that?
The cameras were on her. It's not just because she's Poker Bunny. It's because there was the bubble.
Anyways, there was a story written about her that brought up a bunch of stuff that wasn't at all relevant to the hand, which was poorly written in my opinion, but whatever. And it brought up the more bigger discussion about the all-in rule, and do we need to have cards on backs every time that somebody's all in a tournament? So Daniel, first off, your thoughts on this specific hand, and then sort of, I guess, the all-in rule from there.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I got some old school thoughts on this one too. But so in the old days, back in the late 90s when I started playing poker tournaments, we did this weird thing where Terrence would go all in pre-flop, I call all in, and we wouldn't turn our hands up, right? So you're sitting there with queens, and then the flop is like king 6-4. You're like, oh shit, does he have ace king? Then the river's an ace. You're like, oh, now I'm really screwed. And then you're both looking at each other because he's got jacks. And he's feeling the same thing, and you're like, oh my God. So there's this awkward moment, this little hesitation. And the reason being, the key reason back then was they didn't want to embarrass a caller ever. You didn't want to embarrass a guy for calling it off like king 10 or something, like really playing badly, because that was the main focus, right? Obviously tournaments evolved and there's excitement with TV cameras. And now, you have a big all-in situation, you turn the cards face up, and that's great. And I'm all for that in those spots. What I do think though, is going back to the old school a little bit, is in these situations where on the river, some player goes all in, the other player calls, first player shows the nuts, second player's out. Don't embarrass them by going, look what they called by. So the thing that she did, right? Now, hers was, so a lot of people compared it to what Phil Ivey did, because Phil Ivey was in a heads-up tournament with Rabichow. And when he called all in on the river, Rabichow showed the best hand, and Phil just like threw his hand in the muck and scrambled him. So you want anybody to see, right? There's a couple differences. Okay. Number one is they're in a heads-up tournament, so there's no like chip dumping or collusion, obviously, right? But more importantly, the other part was like, he didn't actually like try to wrestle with the dealer, and it was, awkward and all that stuff. And that has nothing to say about the article itself, just like the differences in those two environments. So in my opinion, it's always been customary to let the player do that. But, and then I really believe that like, so the argument against it was like, why keep this rule in place? And the only argument people make is it stops collusion. It does not. And it does not even more so today than ever. Since the invent of the big blind ante, it is common. It is likely. It is the thing you do. If you have a 500K stack and you go all in on the river, people bet $4.95 and they leave one chip back. They all do it. All the top pros. The reason for that, ICM related. That chip has more value being held for your bluffs or your value than it does the value you get on the call of the river because of the big blind ante. So everyone does this. So the idea that like you could bet $4.95, I could bet $4.95. Terrence can just go, I'm all in, and I can muck my hand, right? And you win the pot, and I could chip dump you that way. But the bottom line also too is the way people cheat. Nobody does it like this. They don't make it this egregious or that obvious. If people want to collude, they'll collude. So maybe this thing, and I hope it does, because a lot of the focus was on, like, obviously you said, like, the writing of the piece and the focus on her sexuality and all this kind of stuff, which kind of sidebarred from something that I think hopefully the silver lining is we go, okay, well, is this real stupid? Like, I think it's stupid. Like, we don't need to freaking embarrass people when she was clearly embarrassed. Like, she was clearly embarrassed by the call. She didn't want anyone to see for whatever reason. And as far as I'm concerned, she should have every right to do it. Now, that doesn't mean I condone the way in which she did it, right? Like, you can't grab the cards out of the dealer's hand and all that kind of stuff. And like, people can, anyway. But yeah, so that's my take.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a stupid rule. I've always thought it was a stupid rule. It is, somebody asked Matt Savage this is like, in the history of poker, has anybody actually ever been caught colluding with this rule? And he said, yeah, it's happened. He also made the argument, and I don't really strongly agree with this because it can happen in non-all-in situations, is that there's been lots of times where he's seen that because of this rule, a guy who was about to muck the winning hand didn't muck the winning hand and got shown. As far as I'm concerned, that's not necessarily a feature. If we just talked about being able to read your own hand and turning if you have any doubt about your hand, turn your cards over at showdown. And besides the fact is it just what makes this particular all in, I could be all in for 3 big blinds, not realize I had the winning hand, then turn it over, and now I have 6 big blinds. It's great. But except earlier in the day, I had like an 80 big blind pot that I accidentally mucked the winner on. Like why don't we just do it for every single hand then if you never want the wrong guy to win the pot? So I don't think that's a good reason. I think we can just get rid of the rule, and I'd be perfectly happy.
Jason Kuhn brought up another one, and this is a small strategic thing, and this isn't necessarily like plus or minus, but it's actually true, is that part of what this rule does is on the river, if I go all in and some amateur, is thinking about calling me, they're less likely to call me light if they have to show what they called with.
Yeah. Yep.
If like they have to show that they called me with queen high and I show kings full, and they feel really dumb. They're less likely.
Those are the ones that know about the rules. There's so many people. I played in the World Series. I played in the World Series 20 years, just like you guys have. Every year, there's somebody who doesn't know that there's this rule, and it's arguably even worse. There's like an all in on the river. Now this guy's busted from the tournament, and he's mad. Like, he's had a shitty experience because like he called it off super light with 5th pair or whatever it was. And like the guy just showed top set and like he tries to muck and just get other stuff, walk out of the room and slink out of the room and pretend like it never happened. And the dealer just like grabs his hand and turns it over for 8 other guys to see. Like, it's just a shitty experience.
Yeah. I also think too, it's time to stop being so naive as a community. Really stop being naive about these little itty bitty rules, like doing anything to stop 2 bad actors. Okay.
Right.
Listen, I promise you, if 2 people want to cheat, none of these things that you're doing is going to have any effect on their ability to do whatever they're doing. They could use hand signals. They could use, chip sizes. Like, there's a whole bunch of ways in which people could cheat that don't need to. So I find like a lot of the rules that just like, again, this one is just all about embarrassing the person. It does nothing. What we did in the old days was this. The rule was this before it became like must show. The rule is anyone at the table has a right to see a called hand if they choose to.
And if you called, you got grief. Like if you
well, so hold on, yeah. So hold on. Before online poker, this was rarely done because essentially what you're saying is, Terrence and Adam, I think you guys are cheating. I want to see that hand. Call the floor, right? When online poker happened, everyone got accustomed to clicking on the hand history button and being like, oh, that's what he had, because you can always see what they had, what they called you with, right? So then, since online poker, now people were using that rule to be like, I just wanted to see his hand. Like, yeah, but that's not what it's for. It wasn't for your curiosity or for your strategy.
I would say in the 90s that still happened. I mean, we were all playing cash. I definitely played cash games in the 90s where people were just like, I want to see that hand at the showdown.
Yeah, they did that, but we used to condemn those people.
Yeah.
Like, but it happened a lot more. But the thing is, when online poker happened, is everyone thought that they didn't see anything wrong with that because they didn't have the connotation.
It was normalized.
They didn't have the connotation of this meaning, I think you're cheating. That's no longer what it meant to them. It was just like, I just want to see his hand. I want to know what he was playing. Like, I get you want to, but like, I came from a time in poker where people's whole cards were not shown. You got to like keep some information to yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, but Adam, you did raise an interesting point about that Poker News article, because a lot of the discussion was around the Poker News article and the way that it was written, and sort of like mentioning things that don't really have to do with anything. Like this quote about like, I've used my sexuality but not for buy-ins. The fact is, like, she does attract an inordinate amount of attention for who she is. Some of the things that she's done in the past, the way that she looks, there's a lot of things. And I just want to say, like, this is a young woman that's been through a lot of shit. If you've ever listened to the Chasing Poker Greatness podcast interview with her, if you ever listened to it before it got taken down, it was fantastic. This poor young woman's, I think she's like 23 years old. She's been through a lot of shit. She's been through some abusive shit. And, so when she behaves poorly, I'm not saying that's an excuse for her to behave poorly. It's not like that. But I think there's been comparisons that have been made to Brandy Hawbaker, and I don't like those comparisons, and I don't think they're appropriate analogies. But I think we are thrusting a 23-year-old woman in the spotlight who's got a lot of trauma and hopefully is seeing someone about this. And she's in a profession that puts a spotlight on her. And yes, she's chosen to have some of the spotlight for sure. She's put herself out there to be part of the spotlight. She says, I want to be a high stakes poker player. I want to be seen in the community. At the same time, I would like to see some more responsible treatment of her in the poker media. And I think some people have done it very well. I think James Hartigan on the call, the play-by-play was absolutely fantastic. He stated the facts as they were. The editorializing that was done by Poker News, I know, Adam, that you had issue with it. I have issue with it. Yeah, I mean, I'll just leave it at that. I don't think it was a good article either.
Well, just treat people with respect. That's all. Like, that's all you need to do, right? It's a default thing that you should do, and I didn't think that was the way it was happening.
If you're writing if Phil Hellmuth had done this, the article takes a very different tone. That's the thing, right? Like Phil Hellmuth has done a lot of absolutely bizarre, over the line shit at the poker table over the years. He does at least once a World Series, sometimes twice. And the tone of that article would be very different. So yeah, I think and Phil Hellmuth is a 50-plus-year-old man. We're talking about a 23-year-old.
I do think what you're pointing to a really important thing, which is kind of like how people's narratives get shaped, right? So Phil Hellmuth is a good example of somebody who, over the years has been, that's just the poker brat, right? So a lot of things he do, we just kind of chalk it up to like, poker brat being poker brat, right? But then with someone like her, with sort of like, I don't know, whatever, I'm not even up to date on all the sort of transgressions and drama that she's been involved with, but I've heard she's been in some beefs here and there or whatever. So like that's becoming her narrative now, right? And it's sort of there. And so then when people do report on it, they reported it coming from that place, right? Yeah. Rather than objectively just saying, this is a person who did this. You're going to.
I know that a lot of poker news people,
all things that came before that.
Yeah, Chad Holloway of Poker News definitely has beef with her, and vice versa. And I don't even think that Chad necessarily is justified. From what I've heard from other people at the poker table, Paulina did treat some of the Poker News reporters quite poorly. And
I've
so
heard that internally that partly, she has been, according to them, right? This is just hearsay, that she has been not so nice to some of them. So there could be some overlap there. I don't know.
Exactly. So there's going to
But you
be
should be able to keep that stuff out when you're writing.
as a journalist.
Like
exactly.
my wife, no joke. I swear to God, this was so funny. A couple of years ago, and I won't name the guy, whatever. But he's probably going to know who he is if he listens to this. Okay, I'm a notable pro, right? Like you can say that. I'm a Hall of Famer.
Notable pro Daniel Negreanu says.
Okay. I'm like at least a notable pro. So my wife, she'd be watching how I'm doing in the mixed tournaments or whatever, and she'd be looking in the poker news updates and just like she'd see like, oh, this guy bagged chips, and then like notables and all these people. The guy wouldn't even mention me. Like I wasn't even in the notables. Like I'm fourth in chips to end day one of like 10K Omaha. And he didn't even I didn't even get in the notables blurb. She's like, babe, this guy never reports on any of your hands, right? Reports on everybody else's. And then he also doesn't even put you in the notables, right? So here's my thinking. Everyone has their own agenda, right? But when you're a writer, I think one of the things you have to try to do as best you can is just be objective, tell the story, tell the news as it is, right? Leave that sort of animosity or heated beef that you have with people outside of your titles, like in your clickbait and stuff like that. You have to be more objective in that regard and not let sort of personal stuff. And this is true not just of poker, but everybody who writes about anything, right? Whether you're writing about freaking, Elon Musk or Nancy Pelosi or whoever, right? Write the facts. Just leave your own sort of personal, animosity alone.
Yeah, agreed. All right. One more thing before we get into a couple of tweets. Daniel, I want you to click on your mute button here. We can see your mouth moving, but this is something because I don't want you to get sued again. So we're gonna quickly just mention that, and the reason I don't, I thought, should we even mention this? But this is a good sort of thing in the poker world to say that Mike Postle. So Mike Postle.
I cheated.
You mean Mike Lawrence? I only saw Mike Lawrence. I don't know who this Mike Postle is.
He plays in a poker tournament this week. Final table's an event. I think there's 200K up top. It's in Mississippi, I think. He tags his bag at the end of the day, Mike Lawrence. And it's like 100 degrees, whatever down there. And he's got like his hoodie over his head. You can see the live stream. He's got a hat on. There's discussion if he had a fake nose or whatever, I don't know, but you could see he was clearly trying to hide himself, given this was on television. And to quickly go back, Mike Postle, quote unquote, cheated.
He cheated
a large amount of money on a live. Yeah, we're in Canada.
Allegedly.
Try and sue us.
Allegedly.
We're allegedly. Hit mute, Daniel. I'm telling you, hit mute.
I said allegedly. Allegedly.
You can sue us in Canada. You got no shot. So anyways, he cheated and on a live stream, stole a bunch of money from people. He's a piece of whatever. And he played in a tournament and tried to hide himself, called himself Mike Lawrence when he bagged his chips. He's obviously trying to evade the fact that he didn't want anybody to know. And he's got some judgments out there. I know, Daniel, I don't think you followed up with it, but a couple of people, Veronica Brill, Todd Wittelis, both filed anti-slap against him and won judgments for their legal fees. So he owes them some money. And they tried to put a garnish. There was a lawyer involved in the poker community who said, hey, I'll do it as a service to the poker community. I won't charge you anything. And I'll try and slap a garnish on this so he can't cash his money out. Turns out they didn't have enough time or something. There was a holiday or I don't know, whatever. Anyway, they couldn't. He ends up finishing 7th. Mike Postle does, and in a fantastic fashion, by the way. He has an overpair, and a guy flops a top set, and Postle shoves, and the guy sits there for like 30 seconds and thinks. He's obviously calling, and then slow rolls and snap calls. And Terrence, you were funny. I think you had a tweet where you said that was about 5 minutes, not long enough, or something.
Yeah, I mean, I assume he just didn't want to waste everybody else's time, but I mean, that could have gone on for a while.
But poker service, community service to the poker world. If you notice Mike Postle playing in a tournament, hit Twitter, tag Daniel, Terrence, myself, whoever. Don't tag
Veronica.
Tag Veronica, tag Todd, tag myself, tag Terrence and Ross. And if you see him playing in a poker tournament, we want everybody to know the lawyer should go get filings in every state that you can play poker in to stop this guy from being able to cash. A quick
guy can't even cross the street without a legal hassle.
Yeah, exactly. So I didn't really want to talk too much about that, but I did want to get the little sort of poker community out there to keep an eye out for him. Getting on some tweets. Roscoe, what do you got? You got a drop for us.
You're going surfing on the internet.
Favorite drop, Henry Kilbane. So this started some discussion. Henry Kilbane from the UK. He said, this is so he's quote tweeting Josh Arieh, who spotted Christoph Olsgosang doing some sprints for his poker prep workout, and Josh put a video of it from up above that Christoph is kind of running very slowly. It was really funny. Christoph, in context, plays
doing what people consider jogging. I think.
Yeah, it was this
jogging
very,
would
very
be the
slow
word.
jog.
Very slow jogging.
Is a slow poker player.
How fast do you jog? I don't jog that fast these days.
Yeah, it looked like, pretty slow jogging. But
Anyways, the joke was great. Josh was a funny guy, and it was funny. And I don't think even Christoph, I would be completely shocked if he was offended by it. Henry Kilbane was a bit offended, and he quote tweeted Josh's video, and he said, "This is bullying, and I'm saddened by the responses. I understand he tanks, and it isn't great from an entertainment POV for poker. I'm one of the first in the booth to call it out. But filming somebody working out and posting it online because they're slow is out of line. We can do better." And the overwhelming response was, "What the fuck are you talking about? This wasn't even that big of a deal." But I know it touched a nerve in the poker community. Daniel, did you want to just quickly talk about that?
Yeah, no, for sure. So I think it seems like everyone got the joke except Henry, because Henry focused on the workout, right? Christoph is lean, endurance runner, plays soccer. He's very fit. It's clear that, the joke wasn't about him working out. It had nothing to do with his physicality. The joke was 100% about his pace of play, right? So his pace of play, as we know, this guy has taken 9 minutes to c-bet a flop heads up, right? So we take needles at him, and Christoph's pretty good-hearted about it. He realizes that's a problem of his. But this wasn't physical body shaming. This wasn't bullying in any way, shape, or form. Now the real question is, had it been Sean Deeb trying to run, right? Would it be different? Because Josh and him are actually good friends, right? So I don't know. Are you allowed because he's your buddy or whatever? And the difference is, I don't think Josh and Christoph have a relationship. So some people take issue with the fact that, they don't really know each other. And I know, Terrence, we sort of talked about this earlier, just about, the privacy issue. And I think that, okay, obviously if you're in a private gym, it's a little weird, but there's 5,000 rooms above that are, that can do that. And I think ultimately, the joke was lighthearted. It wasn't intended to cause any harm. I know that from Josh's perspective. And I think, again, I think Henry sort of maybe missed the humor part, because it was nothing about physicality. Because I agree with them. The idea of going to a gym or shaming people for how they work out or anything like that is nut low behavior. It's fuck you, dude, for making fun of somebody who's trying to better themselves. That's not what this is, though. Come on. It's a stretch. Christoph plays, he plays soccer at a high level. The guy is athletic. This was not at all mocking his physicality in any way. Because I know later in the comments, Henry mentioned it a couple times, yeah, we're going to bring you to the gym and make fun of your reps. Nobody was making fun of him running. It's just kind of a fun idea, oh, this is how he preps, by running extra slow so he can prep for poker. So I really think, in this case, Henry missed the joke. And the idea of it being bullying, that's a major stretch. When I was a kid, bullying was if you got bullied, you were without lunch money and a jacket. And I understand that it's evolved, and we've understood there's more ways in which people feel bullied. But I also think you demean the meaning of the word when you label something like this as bullying, because people deal with real bullying, right? And Christoph is a wealthy white German dude who does a lot of good for the world, makes a lot of money traveling in Bahamas. I don't think anyone's throwing a pity party for him. Now, should Josh have maybe say, hey, Christoph, is it cool if I post this? Sure, right? But I don't think he had any ill intent, and I don't think any harm was done.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that, really. I I think it's a little gross to film somebody that you don't actually know. Yeah, it's it's public, whatever. But I don't know. I don't want to live in a world where everybody can just film each other fucking going grocery shopping and post it on their Twitter and be look at how many followers I have. They all think you're hilarious. I mean, I just hate that world. And I know that that's kind of the world that we live in at this point. But yeah, I agree with you. It is not bullying. It's making fun of someone because of the honestly, if it's bullying him for being slow at the poker table. That's what it's bullying him for. Which if that's bullying, fucking put me first in line. Because
that's the thing. It's
I come on this very show and talked about how I fucking can't stand when Christoph Olsgosang
mocking his speed of play is 1,000% warranted. This is not bullying. This is trying to address an actual issue. And Christoph is too. I spoke to Christoph after that 9-minute tank to c-bet. He said he watched it back. He was embarrassed by it. didn't realize it. Christoph is a perfectionist, right? And without a shot clock, which is why I think you have to have shot clocks in that event too going forward, because he's playing by the rules, right? He wants to get it 100% right, like 100%. And for those who don't remember the hand, it was a simple spot where heads up, it was button raise, he 3-bet jacks, and it came 9-8-3 rainbow. And he took 9 minutes to decide what to do, whether or not to c-bet or not. And what people don't know that maybe are like sort of like don't think about poker from a game theory perspective is there's actually a lot to think about. Like if you had a day or two to break down what to do here, to figure out the exact frequencies for what, you're going to be factoring in like which jacks do you have, which backdoor combos do you block of him having peel. Like there's a whole bunch of added things, but there's a reason, you know, we have to have like respect for players in terms of time. We don't get 3 days. It's not like the old days of what was that thing called IRC where people played poker where you emailed each other what you did. I don't think were you
That was
part
the
of
best.
WRGPT.
Email. Absolutely.
WRGPT.
Yeah, where you have a day or so to decide what your action is, and you play poker that way. Like, there's a reason we have to have speed of play. And listen, Christoph acknowledges it, but I think it's fine. It's fair. He's fair game for ribbing in terms of his pace of play because it's egregious by any standard.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good. All right. We've got a couple of more tweets, but we're going to save those. We've gone long. We're going to save them for the next show. Thanks to you out there for tuning in. Thanks to you guys for getting together. And we will talk to you soon.